Michael Reininger, President and Chief Development Officer of All Aboard Florida.
Thank you all for being here. Just by the magnitude of the number of people in the room today, I think it's a very heartwarming sign of the interest that lies around this particular issue, and we're very pleased to be here to be able to have this dialogue today. And Bob, based on those witty comments that you so eloquently put forward to the group today, I have no doubt in your ability to fill a room. But for those people that have any suggestion or any thought that there is no economic development incentive that comes from All Aboard Florida as an enterprise, I want you to know that I'm taking credit for the economic activity that this room has produced on the All Aboard Florida.
Could you please use the microphone?
I'm trying.
Yes.
Yeah, it's fine. Okay, I hope this is a little bit better. A lot of very interesting comments. I hope we can get directly to the heart of some of those comments as we engage more deeply in the discussion today. We've heard a lot of commentary about Fortress Investment Group. We did hear that he was supportive of the notion of free enterprise and our rights as American citizens and free operating companies to actually do things for a profit. We'll come back to that later, I hope, in the discussion. What I didn't hear were any specific objections to anything that really affects the quality of life or the real issues associated with us operating our private sector business on the private property assets that we have. And so I look forward to the opportunity to get that deeply into understanding what any of those actual commentary or claims might be. What we're doing with All Aboard Florida is building an important addition to our statewide infrastructure. It's an opportunity that spins out significant benefits and is in fact an unprecedented opportunity. It's unprecedented in its scale. It's unprecedented in the fact that it is being sponsored by a private sector entity, and it's unprecedented in the timing associated with the project, which means we can make this a reality in very short order. In fact, we are making it a reality as we sit here in this room today. There's no doubt that this is a first-of-its-kind solution to an important infrastructure challenge that we must address here in the state of Florida. The challenge is not at all unique to the state of Florida. But what is unique is our ability to lead with a smarter, faster, and better approach to solving this challenge in a way that does not place undue risk or burden on the taxpayers of the state or the taxpayers of the United States. We are blessed with an irreplaceable piece of infrastructure that happens to be ideally located for access by our customers and benefited by a century of previous investment. The economics of our solution make it possible to provide the system without the need for public subsidies for operations or its development. That's the magic I referred to in my earlier conversation. I hope we can get into that a little bit more in detail. The fact that we're able to do this on a private sector basis is unheard of anywhere within the context of the United States. It is the only situation like it anywhere in the country. We believe in what we're doing, and we're resolute in our optimism about the future. We work very hard every day, setting aside many short-sighted criticisms that have no basis in reality. Prejudging results without facts is simply counterproductive. We do understand, however, that because what we're proposing is unprecedented, that it gives rise to questions, and in some cases even some anxieties. We believe that through open dialogue, like that which we are having here today, and constructive cooperation, that we can allay these fears and we can show solutions to specific issues that arise. And I hope that today's conversation will in part contribute to that ultimate objective. What we do know as a result of our effort supports our optimism about the future. And we know that All Aboard Florida as a business will offer an alternative mode of travel that will provide a convenient and reliable and comfortable and productive option for mobility. Not for every single trip and not for every single customer that exists in Florida, but certainly for a meaningfully sized audience that will change the way we think about travel in the state of Florida. It will certainly provide a cost-competitive priced option to more than 95% of the people that are traveling in the state, that are connecting between the cities that we will serve with our system, who presently rely on cars for that travel. And it will be especially attractive to those who are the majority of those travelers who today are traveling alone or with only one other passenger in their car. We know that what we're proposing will provide an environmentally responsible option that will take some 3 million cars off of our surrounding roads, and with them go their negative environmental impacts. We know that we are establishing a modernized, fully efficient, and ultimately what will become the safest railroad corridor in the United States as a direct result of the investment that All Aboard Florida will put into the facilities of that existing system. From the All Aboard Florida investment come those improvements of modernization and safety upgrades. We will in fact be producing the fastest and cheapest and easiest solution for communities to achieve quiet zones where they're so desired. And that's possible by leveraging the investment and the cooperation of All Aboard Florida to realize this benefit that in fact touches everyone with any proximity to the existing corridor at all, and is something that has been talked about up and down the corridor for a long time, in fact from long before All Aboard Florida was even a notional possibility. To be quite clear about this, I came here today from a meeting that I had previously this morning in Boca Raton, where we were very proud to announce that we have, in fact, through the cooperation with the metropolitan planning organizations in the counties that are associated with our first phase, are now going to be delivering quiet zones for the entire 67 miles of our first phase of our route. That is something that we've been working tirelessly, cooperatively against for over a year with those organizations. We expect and hope that we can come to the same conclusion for the second phase of our project as well. We continue to work towards that goal every day. What we know is that cooperation can in fact make it possible. We proved that this morning. So already, this important community benefit has been created and is a direct result of the activities of All Aboard Florida. We know that we're going to be providing solutions to other issues of concerns that have been expressed related to the existing and future uses of the corridor, including freight traffic, that absent the investment from All Aboard Florida will have no means other than public participation to be addressed. We know passenger rail can be profitable, and we don't need to parse words to make that statement. It is profitable. It is profitable here in the United States. The Amtrak Acela service, which Bob mentioned previously, which is the intercity express passenger service providing the same sort of travel that we will be providing with All Aboard Florida, generates $520 million of revenue across its system. That accounts for 25% of the total revenue of the entire national system of Amtrak in just that service alone. But so we understand what the word profitability means to us. That $520 million worth of revenue generates $214 million worth of earnings. That's my definition of profit. When your expenses are lower than your revenues, that's what profit means. And in our model, that's how we define profit. That's the facts. Those are the situations that are surrounding the Amtrak service in the Northeast Corridor. But that's not the only example in the United States. There have been recently introduced new lines in the Amtrak system, such as those providing service between Lynchburg, Virginia, and Washington, D.C., a line between Norfolk, Virginia, and Richmond, Virginia. And there's a new seasonal service between Cape Cod and Boston, all of which today operate profitably. Their expenses are lower than their revenues, the definition of profit in our book. And all of those systems have been operating profitably since the introduction of those services. We also know for a fact that express intercity passenger service works incredibly well in many other places around the world. We know this because we've studied all of these systems very deeply. And we've in fact modeled our system based on what we have come to learn are the core factors that drive those successes. We have innovated that model for specific application to the Florida market and to the targeted customers that we've found through study here in the Florida market. So if anyone tells you that no profitable passenger rail examples exist, they simply don't have command of the facts. We've heard many demands, what can only be categorized as demands, for our business plan, as though there is some right that is held by the public for private and confidential information associated with the investment risks and our strategies to introduce a new business. What we are happy to share with you is our very clear thesis against which our company is investing over $1 billion of new capital and assets against. Money that we are putting into the system fully at risk without any contribution from anybody else. Why? Because we know passenger rail works when two kinds of characteristics exist. First, wherever travel by car is challenged by a constrained road system and excessive traffic exists on those road systems, quite simply, another option becomes a more desirable way and a more reliable way to satisfy that traffic demand. Our first phase, which provides service between the largest population densities in the state and is presently served almost exclusively by the I-95 corridor, is a textbook example of the kind of situation and the kind of characteristic that gives rise to successful passenger railroad operations. The second situation that has proven to be effective for passenger rail is when trips simply are too short to fly and too long to drive. Very specifically, what we've understood is that for trips that exist between a 250-mile and 350-mile trip range, when you can accommodate that trip in 3 hours or less, train has regularly become the favorite mode for many of those travelers. Again, quite simply because that trip is as fast as it is to fly and much faster than the alternative of driving. And compared to either of those two options, travel by train is more reliable, more comfortable, and more productive. We have identified a very large market potential here in Florida. Well over 400 million trips are being taken today in the state of Florida that are intercity trips. That is to say, trips that either start in one of our station locations and end in our station location. We expect to be able to capture only a few percentage points of those existing trips, and that ridership will support the economics that underpins our business thesis. We've created a bottoms-up operating cost pro forma using the experienced people that we have engaged on board our team that are among the industry's most knowledgeable and respected professionals. We are simultaneously developing several million square feet of commercial real estate, all at our station location hubs in our first phase, which, while an independent profit center, further provides support to our overall business proposition. Our view is really pretty straightforward and ultimately led by rationing. As Florida grows from its current state of about 19.5 million people to something over 25 million people with more than 100 million visitors in the course of the next 15 years, we believe there's both room for and demand for a transportation option to carry the load of some of that need. That resulting system not only carries its own weight financially, it also reduces other burdens that must be carried by the public sector, like the costs of roads and the effects of environmental degradation, and ultimately the loss of productivity and lifestyle impacts that more cars on ever more congested roads certainly portend. We also believe that many, many millions of people today are the customer base that we're going to be targeting. And we believe plenty of people will want to ride our trains because we believe that this option is totally aligned with their preferences. Millions of Florida voters and travelers today vote with their feet every day when they choose to use one of the many existing forms of passenger rail that's offered within the state. And specifically, we would be referencing the Tri-Rail system that today serves over 4.5 million annual riders commuting within South Florida. Or the Metro Rail riders, over 21 million of them annually, that use Metro Rail in Miami-Dade County to move about in Miami. Or Metro Mover, where over 9 million people annually board trains to zip throughout the downtown Miami metropolitan area. Or more recently, Sunrail, where over 4,000 people a day, already within the first couple months of operation, hitting their targeted stabilized ridership projections, serving Central Floridian commuters looking for another way other than congested roadways to get to the places that they already need to get to. We believe that mass transportation by rail is a definitive part of our future. And we believe we should all seize on the opportunity right now, right here, to in fact redefine what it means to travel by train within the United States. We believe in this case, Florida can be a national leader in achieving that goal. All Aboard Florida is an ambitious project, make no mistake. It's also without recent precedent. And we're very proud of that fact. And we make no apologies for our resolve, and our optimism in continuing to push forward the idea that we in Florida can make this happen in a real-time manner. We think Florida deserves that, and we know we can achieve the objective. Now, if I could very briefly address a couple of the key points that were brought up by Mr. Solari. First of all, he continually made reference to Fortress Investment Group. So let's be clear about something. Fortress Investment Group isn't the quote-unquote owner of All Aboard Florida. Fortress Investment Group is a private equity firm. They're an asset manager. The owners of All Aboard Florida, of Florida East Coast Industries, of the separate company Florida East Coast Railroad, very well may be some of you in this room. Through your pension funds, through your investment vehicles, through your 401k. They manage the assets of investors who in fact own those companies. We at All Aboard Florida are charged with the management and the creation of the company that is All Aboard Florida. And yes, Mr. Solari, our mission is to make that a profitable company. And we work every single day to make sure that that happens. Last I checked, that wasn't against the law. The other interesting premise that I think Mr. Solari would lead you to believe is that there is somehow some conspiracy theory at work that All Aboard Florida is really all about the introduction of a new investment that really is designed to increase additional freight capacity in a system that exists in the right-of-way today and that, oh, by the way, has been in operation continuously for over 100 years. So let's examine that for just a second. The totality of the investment of All Aboard Florida is about $2.5 billion. The total cost of the investment of the hard assets that are going into the ground in the railway in the form of rail infrastructure is about $1.5 billion. That means there's $1 billion separation. Of that $1.5 billion, hundreds of millions of dollars of that infrastructure improvement are specifically related only to passenger rail. Let's be clear about that. If there were no passenger rail, the introduction of the infrastructure program into the system would not be $1.5 billion. It would be something closer to $1 billion, which represents the incremental capacity of rail system that is being put into the ground, specifically to accommodate the traffic associated with the 32 trains from All Aboard Florida. So let's understand what his premise really means. If we were to believe his premise, that says there's $1 billion worth of additional infrastructure that somehow is going to be only beneficial to freight. And we as a company are somehow willing to invest $1 billion today in things that don't have anything to do with freight. Like, for instance, passenger trains and vehicle maintenance facilities to maintain those passenger trains, or transportation communication systems that are only necessary because of passenger trains. And we're going to put that money up now, all because at the end of the day, what we really want is a decreased loan amount for $1 billion worth of railroad improvements. I fail to see how that is remotely logical in any form. So to follow his premise to its logical conclusion, we would have to be very comfortable by investing $1 billion in stuff we don't need and take on $1 billion of new debt instead of simply investing the $1 billion to get the additional freight capacity. That's what I call silly and completely illogical. But let's go just a little bit deeper. If it was really all about access to a lower cost of debt for those railroad improvements, and it was really only about freight traffic, it had nothing to do with our core business premise, which is a separate company, by the way, why wouldn't the freight railroad who is totally eligible for the exact same loan program that all aboard Florida is eligible for, simply make application directly, and we'd never even be having this discussion about the investment associated with the passenger train. Well, there's a very logical answer for that. Because the freight system doesn't need additional capacity. The freight system has additional capacity as it stands today. So when we entertain these notions of what he would have you believe to be half-truths or parsing of words, I hope we have the opportunity to sort of dig into those things in a very candid and very clear manner, because it is our deep-felt desire that through productive dialogue and open discourse around issues that really matter relevant to what we are proposing, that we can allay anxieties, that we can calm fears, and we can work together to find solutions to real-world issues that need to be addressed, not unlike the quiet zone situation that I described that we dealt with earlier today. Thank you very much.
I'd like to know, Michael, that just in fairness, you did go past the 12 minutes, and you also did use the 2-minute rebuttal process to speak directly to what Commissioner Solari had already said, as opposed to just making your presentation. Now we're going to let Commissioner Solari make his 2-minute rebuttal process, and then we're going to start with the question and answer. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you, John. Given that I'm going to try to keep to my 2 minutes, I can only address 2 or 3 items. One is the idea that I suggested a conspiracy theory about the freight. You all heard what I said. I didn't mention conspiracy theory, and I never mentioned the words additional freight capacity, Mr. Reininger. I simply said it's silly and illogical to suppose that any business, if they put in $1 billion of new infrastructure, regardless where the money comes from, regardless which company pays for it, that core business, in this case the freight business, would not be more profitable. Nobody can dismiss that. Now, some of you may have heard, once again, when we're trying to get to the truth of things, Mr. Reininger said that this project was, quote, being done without the need of public subsidies. I checked my dictionary today. What is a public subsidy? A public subsidy is a pecuniary aid given by the government to a private company, like Mr. Reininger's All Aboard Florida. What is the pecuniary aid in the present case? It is simply the difference between the sweetheart loan, which they'll get from the FRA, which is legal. I never said that. Which is offered to many people. But that difference of the loan from the FRA at 5.75% versus the market loan, for instance, that they got at 12% recently for $405 million. If you do the mortgage amortization schedules, that comes down to an interest savings over the 35-year term of the loan to $3.1 billion. $3.1 billion. That's the subsidy. I'm not arguing the subsidy. I'm arguing why they want to hide the subsidy. And it took a long time for me to figure that out. It's because, again, Mr. Reininger mentioned that the public has no right to look at their business plan. If you agree that there's no subsidy, that's true. But once you agree that the taxpayers are paying for that subsidy, the argument against non-disclosure goes away, and the public has the right. The elected official has the duty to ask for an investment-grade business plan to see if the taxpayer dollars are being protected.